10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 254. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 254 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. Hope you are all doing amazingly out there, and welcome into our last episode of the month of March. We're going to finish up as we always do with our tune of the month, and we're going to follow through on the lessons that we learned from Miles Davis this month. So as usual, before we jump into the show, I've got some new patrons to thank. And if you would like to support the show, we are a listener-supported podcast, and you could support us with a small monthly donation every month and get a bunch of jazz education materials in return. This is episode 254, so you get access to all 254 PDFs, audio recordings, all kinds of stuff over there for one small monthly fee. In order to sign up, just go to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, and you can get yourself signed up right now and get instant access to all those materials. So let me give a shout out to the new patrons. We have a bunch of new $5 patrons this week. Thank you to Kishore, David, Amelia, Mike, Mark, TJ, and Richard for editing his pledge up to $5. Welcome to all those new patrons. Thank you so much for joining. And our new $3 patron, Dom. And as always, thank you to everybody that's been with us for a long time over there. We could not do this show without you, and your support is really what makes this show possible. So again, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, get yourself signed up today. All right, so this week we are finishing up our series on Miles Davis. I've prepared a couple courses of an etude over a Miles Davis tune. You know, I had to choose a Miles Davis composition. And what I realized is that we've really done a lot of Miles Davis tunes for our previous Tune of the Month episodes. So I had to dig a little bit deeper into the catalog. And the one that I ended up choosing was his composition, Nardis. Now, this tune is a lot different than, let's say, like his composition 4 or his composition Tune-Up, some of the stuff that we've done in the past already, or his rhythm changes tunes. And this tune, in my opinion, is a lot harder to play over. I am not afraid to admit that I've always had trouble playing over this tune. So it was a real challenge for me to write the etude, and we'll get to that later. But here's the reason why I think that this tune is a little bit more difficult. Instead of following, a circle of fourths with a lot of 2-5-1 progressions, a lot of really, really traditional harmony, this tune does things a little bit differently. It's a genius chord progression, but it may take you a while if you've never played over this tune to really get the hang of the sound of it and get used to this chord progression. So for instance, the A sections, they utilize a lot of non-traditional chord transitions. So for instance, it starts with a regular old E minor chord, and then it goes up a half step to an F major chord. And then it jumps up a tritone and goes to a B7 chord. And then it moves up another half step and goes to a C major 7 chord. Then we come down to A minor, back to F major, down a half step to E major, and then that E major chord turns back into an E minor chord. So you can see we don't have like a single traditional fourth movement or anything that involves the circle of fourths or the circle of fifths. We don't have any 2-5-1s. So this could be really, really challenging for all of you if you've never checked this tune out before. So plan on spending a lot of time with this tune to really be able to play over it as well as play the etude. Now, the second thing is, since I have trouble with this tune and I've never been very good at playing over it, I'm not really that happy with the etude that I wrote. And I'm going to be very honest about that. Usually I can sit down for a couple of hours and write these etudes and come up with something that I'm really, really happy with. This one, I spent way too long. I mean, I spent hours coming up with this etude, trying to incorporate some of the factors that we've been talking about this month, which is, basically space and playing mostly diatonic notes. And those were the two things that I was really trying to emulate. And yeah, just being honest with you guys, I'm not super, super happy with the result. And what I'm going to do is I'm definitely going to go back and do a bunch of revisions of this particular etude. And I'll post those on Patreon. But this is something that I think we all experience as jazz students. We get really frustrated with certain things. There's certain things that we are good at. Like I'm really good at a traditional bebop chord progression or something that is more logical. I'm not very good at playing over tunes like this. And this is something that I really, really need to work on in my playing, but something that I'm very unhappy with right now. And I only have so much time in the week to prepare this stuff for you. And it just kind of kills me that I'm putting out an etude that I'm not 100% happy with. But at some point, I had to just finish this up. And that's something that we all have to do, right? If we all had absolutely unlimited time, we could dig into this stuff. But it's going to take me a certain period of time to come up with something that I'm truly, truly happy with over this. And I think that's something that we should all be prepared for in our lives as developing musicians and students of the music. We are going to run into that brick wall at some point where we're just totally, totally unhappy with our output over a certain tune, a certain set of changes, or a certain concept. And we just have to fight through it and keep working over that set of changes or that concept that we're really unfamiliar with. So I've been working on this tune a bunch since I wrote the etude, and it's slowly starting to get better. Now, the other thing that didn't come very naturally to me was the concepts that we talked about. So a lot of space and just playing diatonic notes. What I wanted to reach for was kind of my most complicated harmonic material, and I had to really check myself because I was trying to accomplish a certain sound over this etude. And it'll get better over time, but you'll hear my result. And it was a real learning experience for me to not have those common harmonic devices that I reach for all the time available to me. So even though this was kind of a painful exercise and I'm not totally happy with the result, it was so good for me to do this. And I want you to realize that sometimes in the practice room, when you're feeling the most pain, you're actually growing the most, right? So when you're totally unfamiliar with something or you're having a ton of trouble with something, that's when you're going to make the biggest steps because you're fundamentally changing your approach to music. And sometimes learning those new skills and making a big leap in your playing can be the most painful time for you. Okay. All right. So let's check out the etude, and I want you to listen for my attempted use of space and the fact that I'm really not doing anything super fancy harmonically. In only a couple of spots will you notice that I'm using some non-harmonic tones and things like that. The majority of this etude is very, very straightforward. So let's check out the etude, then we'll talk for a minute at the end. So the things that I had trouble with weren't necessarily so much the empty space, the negative space. I've studied that a lot, and I feel like I have kind of a natural ability to put some space into my playing. And that's just how I kind of approach the music. But the diatonic thing was really hard for me. And then combining that with the phrasing was the part that I'm just a little bit unhappy with. So the thing that I learned through this process of writing this etude was that I need to figure out how to do more with less harmonically. If I always reach for that diminished sound, or I'm always reaching for a triad pair, or I'm really relying on those super complicated structures that I've studied, I shouldn't. I shouldn't, because I feel like totally lost when I can't use those, when I limit myself from using those. So that's sort of what I took away from this. And I think a lot of you are going to get a major wake up call when you start studying this particular chord progression, that there's, some stuff that you got to work on. And that's fine. That's what I realized as well. So hopefully you get something out of this. It's just been me kind of complaining about my shortcomings for this episode. But I think that's just a reality of being a musician that's trying to get better all the time, is that you're just going to be frustrated. And this week was definitely maybe the most frustrating week in the last couple of years of making this particular podcast and putting out all of this material all the time. So here's my challenge for you this week. I want you to make my etude better. So I want you to take the things that you like from my etude and keep them, and then take the things that you don't like and change them into something that comes from your brain instead of mine. So I want you to basically just edit my etude into something that you can kind of call your own. And maybe you hate the whole thing and you want to just ditch it and write your own. That's fine too. But I have a feeling that most of you will find at least a couple of things that you might enjoy from what I wrote. At least I hope so. So that's your assignment for this week. Learn my etude and then change it and fit it to more of your own individual style. And the Patreon members will obviously get the etude, and then the $5 members will also get a demonstration track, plus they'll get a backing track to this to use to write their own etude. So I'm really looking forward to hearing some of those, and hopefully you can improve upon what I have written here. And hopefully my whining and complaining about how I didn't do such a good job this week wasn't too annoying, and hopefully you'll be able to stay inspired and get something out of this particular episode. All right. Hope you're all doing well out there. Thank you so much to the patrons that are supporting the show, and I look forward to hearing some of your results from this week's assignment. We'll see you all next week. Stay safe and healthy, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.